Good morning. My name is Detective Melanie Robinson with Kent Police Department, Public Information Officer. Thank you for coming this morning. We are planning on addressing some of the gun violence and crime issues that are going on in South King County. Obviously, we have quite a few representatives up here as well, several of which will be talking. I ask that you hold any questions till the end, and we'll answer some of the questions. And for some of the questions that maybe we can't answer right now, we'll get back to you and get back to you in regards to that. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Kent Police Chief Ken Thomas.
Thank you, Melanie. Well, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for being here. We'd like to update you on the partnership and work being done collaboratively to address gun violence in South King County. The partnerships with federal, state, and local law enforcement and prosecutors that have come together to aggressively address this issue. Our officers and detectives have worked hard to identify and go after those subjects that we believe are responsible for the violence, and these efforts have resulted in several arrests. As a reminder, I want to provide you with the data that we relied on in the first 4 months of this year that brought this issue to light. This is some data from basically South Seattle to the Pierce County line, covering South King County. There were 16 gun-related homicides in South King County, an additional 48 shootings in which people were hit, however survived their injuries. There were over 100 shots fired calls where we recovered shell casings and observed property damage. And then there was an additional 200 to 300 shots fired calls where officers and deputies were dispatched, however, no evidence was found at those locations. Since our initiative to come together and focus on gun violence, we're seeing some promising trends. Over the past 2 months, we have seen a reduction of shooting incidents per month from over 65 per month average over the first 4 months down to 36 shootings per month in the past 2 months. We were averaging 4 gun-related homicides per month. And over the last 2 months, we've had 1 gun-related homicide per month. Prior to the initiative, we were averaging over 11 shootings where people were hit per month, and we're now down to 4 shootings where people were hit per month. And finally, we were over 25 shots fired incidents with property damage per month, and over the past 2 months, we're down to 14. 2 months are a relatively short period of time to measure the results, but we believe that our efforts are causing the shooting incidents to trend in a positive direction. We are still very concerned about the amount of violence. Summer is now upon us, and these next few months are where we traditionally see an increase in violent crime. In addition, our detectives are telling us that there is talk on the streets of upcoming and impending violence brewing between groups and gangs. As an additional measure to intervene and address the tensions on the street, for several days this past week, we've partnered with the Pacific Northwest Violent Offender Task Force, which is led by the US Marshals Service, and our South King County federal, state, and local law enforcement officers, where we conducted a sweep of subjects with felony warrants and those who we have probable cause to arrest for felony weapons violations. As a result of that operation, 26 subjects were safely taken into custody last week. Our regional law enforcement officers, detectives, deputies, agents are working tirelessly and at great risk to do what we can to help keep our communities safe. One area where we are truly being challenged is with youth and firearms. Much of the violence that we have spoken of has been carried out by juveniles. We are being told by our investigators that juveniles are even being recruited by gang leaders to carry out violent acts because there is little accountability for gun violations in our juvenile justice system. As an example, this past week, 7 juveniles were arrested on felony firearms violations as part of the sweep. 5 of those subjects are already back out onto the streets. So I'd like to give a quick example of an incident that occurred in Kent that also illustrates this issue with a lack of accountability with juveniles and gun violence. In mid-March, we had an incident in Kent where a school bus occupied by 62 elementary-age students stopped at a bus stop in downtown Kent, and there was an altercation, a verbal altercation that occurred between the bus driver and a 15-year-old and 16-year-old. During that altercation, the suspects threatened to kill the bus driver and at one point pulled out this firearm that was fully loaded with an additional 30-round magazine and threatened the bus driver. As our detectives interviewed the bus driver the next day, he was still sobbing. He was so upset and scared because he felt that he was going to be shot that day and the danger that it exposed the children to. The Kent Police Department officers arrested the 2 suspects, a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old. And this case has already been adjudicated in court. One of the suspects got 30 days in detention for this crime. He got 20 hours of community service and 6 months probation. And the other person got 20 days in detention and his case is resolved. There certainly is an issue here with accountability as we do everything that we possibly can to keep our communities safe, and some of the people most responsible for the violence are then put back out on the street with little or no accountability. So thank you for your time and attention as we keep you informed of our efforts to do everything possible to keep our communities safe. Would anybody else like to speak?
Thank you, Chief. Operation Quiet Nights, that was conducted last week, is a product of great collaboration with many federal, state, and local agencies. There were over 70 officers and analysts working together from over almost 24 different agencies and organizations like the Fusion Center and HIDA to target the most violent offenders. The US Marshals Service is committed to working with Kent Police, the King County Sheriff's Office, and other federal state investigators in the South King County area to continue to target the most violent and worst offenders. Thank you.
And your name and title, who are you?
Michael Lee with the US Marshals Service.
Okay, I will be available for some questions.
You talked about a little bit about the lack of or limited punishment that these kids face. What do you suggest as being a solution here to solve some of these problems?
Well, I sit on several task forces and groups that deal with youth violence and prevention and intervention, which is really important. And there's a lot of discussion that takes place on we need to get the kids into intervention programs or an alternative. And unfortunately, right now, we don't have those programs set up and in place to deal with the youth that are creating the problems and committing this violence. So on one hand, we're saying we do not want to have juveniles detained and in custody, but we don't have an alternative set up yet. So what's occurring is we have this continued violence with no accountability. So if we set up these youth programs, and just last week, Chief Lee from Auburn and I met with a representative from the governor's office, and we're talking about putting together a gang summit to help address some of the issues with programs, better intervention, better prevention to help address this issue.
And in terms of access to guns, I think that's one of the issues you guys are looking at too, especially how easy these kids are getting a hold of these weapons, right?
Right. A lot of the guns that we're finding are also getting into the wrong hands due to burglaries, whether they're breaking into businesses or residential houses, and people are not securing their weapons effectively, and that is a huge cause. In fact, this gun that I displayed earlier was a stolen gun from a residential burglary in Pierce County.
Are you finding that the numbers of youth with guns, is it going up more so now than how it has been in the past?
I don't have specific data, but yes, we believe, because we are seeing violence right now at unprecedented levels, and since the youth are a big part of that.
Are you able, I know the ATF can track shell casings through NIBIN, if I'm using the acronym correctly. Are you able to tell how many of these weapons are connected to other crimes? Are these all sort of individual incidents? Like how, you know, you're talking about 26 offenders here, how big of a scope of crimes are they responsible for?
Yeah, there are a lot of offenders that were picked up as part of this latest sweep, but we do utilize the NIBIN database, and we are tracking, we are linking crimes together, and we're finding that a lot of weapons, or that a relatively few number of weapons are associated with a large number of shootings and crimes as we try to track those weapons.
And you know, go ahead. And you're talking about words of violence coming up this summer in terms of gangs and things like that. What are you guys doing now to address that, to reduce the numbers that you're expecting?
Right, well, the first piece was to do a sweep of those most violent offenders that we're aware of and try to intervene that way and get them off the streets. We work with our street outreach workers with Alive and Free, our programs from the Suburban King County Coordinating Council on Gangs. We have a youth link where we do wraparound services for at-risk youth. So we're trying intervention and prevention pieces, but because we're greatly concerned, we're really also going after the suppression and enforcement side to try to disrupt what we're concerned may happen.
Can you go into a little more detail about suppression and enforcement? What does that entail?
Well, it entails anybody who's been involved in a crime, of course, we're going to actively and aggressively investigate that. But those people who may be gang members who have warrants for their arrest, so we're really just going out and trying to disrupt and intervene with the gangs that we're aware of and try to arrest them for criminal violations, to try to intervene in what's happening.
I know you guys are working together with different resources, different agencies. Are there enough resources right now to address all of this at this time?
Well, I think right now, because we've just had incredible cooperation from the city leadership, whether it's the mayors throughout the region, and then all of the police chiefs and the sheriff, and we just all are working together to effectively do what we can to address the problem. So I think resource-wise, we're in pretty good shape right now. There's a lot of concern and there's a lot of support, and so we're doing everything possible to make that happen.
Those 26 arrests, how many were gang members?
I don't have that specific information.
And you mentioned about some of those that are arrested were juveniles already back out in the streets. What about the rest of them? Because you said gun-related crimes. Are they just in jail for a short time, will be back out in the streets? Or?
I do not know the status of the other.
List of the people that are arrested. you know, at least 8 is in hometowns.
Yeah, I'll let you work with the US Marshals Office and see if they can release that.
88% of the targets arrested off our target list were connected to gangs.
I just wanted to bring up the officer-involved shooting over the weekend. There was very little information that came out. Can you address anything about that today?
Yeah, I can tell you there's very little information. We are continuing to work on it. The case is being investigated by our Valley Investigative Team, which is a regional team led by the Des Moines Police Department. So as we get additional information, I will put out, or the Des Moines Police Department will put out an additional press release. My concern is I don't want to put out bad information, so I'm trying to get a little bit more information to be as meaningful as possible, and then we'll get a press release out.
On the March incident with the school bus driver, first time I ever heard about that. Why was nothing put out about that?
There's a Kent Police Department case done on it. I don't know that there was a press release done on that.
There wasn't. And 62 kids on a bus?
Was that the school bus driver with the kids or another bus that's nearby? That's the bus driver?
No, the school bus driver with the kids.
Okay, but the 15 and 16 came from another, they weren't on that same bus?
Correct.
Obviously. But they just
They were
came
just on the street.
They were on the street. And the bus driver was in the bus with the kids?
Correct.
Okay. You know exactly where that happened, around what part of Kent?
It happened on 64th Street, just north of Meeker Street.
Okay. And this was back in March?
Correct.
Okay.
Can you give some more information just about that incident? Did just police arrive and take the 2 into custody right away, or was there a chase involved? What happened there?
They did not take him into custody right away. The police were called, did an area check, and located the 2 suspects.
Can you talk a little bit more about what gangs are you seeing this activity from? Because, you know, what communities are they from, or what cities are they from? Can you shed a little bit more light on that?
It's all South King County. Basically, the gangs and the focus that we're addressing here are from South Seattle to the Pierce County line.
So is it are we seeing sort of turf war that's going on, or can you describe a little bit more about what the, you know, are gangs targeting innocent people? Are they targeting each other?
The majority of what we're seeing is gangs targeting gangs. Our concern is the number of shots being fired and the number of incidents involved, in addition to gang members shooting each other. We're concerned about the welfare of the community that could be caught in the crossfire, and innocent people also being shot unintentionally.
Is there a message that you all want to send to the gang members and to just the people who have all these illegal guns? What are you all trying to tell them?
Well, we're trying to tell them to not be involved in violence. You can make a bad decision that can really affect the rest of your life and other people's lives. If you have guns, either try to get rid of them and call the police and tell us where we can pick them up. We just want to get those guns off the street and out of the hands of kids that are creating a huge concern for the safety of our community. Go ahead, John.
I have a message for the juveniles with gangs, with guns. If you're out there, we're going to catch you. Look at this group. What's different right now, this year in particular, is that all these police agencies, all these local police agencies, plus the Seattle Police Department, plus the King County Sheriff's Office, ATF, DEA, the US Marshals Service, the US Prosecutor, the King County Prosecutor, we've all banded together, come together, we have meetings, we are going to get out there and we are going to catch these shooters, and we're going to take those guns off the street. And if you have guns, you're going to go to jail. If you're an adult, you're going to go to jail. If you're a juvenile, we're going to put you in juvie. Now, you may not stay too long, and that's a shame, but that's what we're going to do. So that's our number 1 message. Our number 2 message is to the parents of these juveniles. Get these kids, get your kids out of gangs, keep them away from guns, or your kids are going to get killed. It's really very simple. Your kids are going to get killed. If you're a homeowner and you have a gun, good for you. But for God's sakes, keep it locked up. None of these guns, none of these shooters are walking into Wade's gun shop and buying a gun. They're buying it on the street, and these guns are all stolen. And they're stolen from houses where people do not lock up their guns. And people are dying because of that. Right now, we do not have a law in Washington that can punish people that don't lock up their guns. Maybe we should. But the responsible thing to do is to lock up your guns so kids don't break in and steal them. And I'll give you one last example. My chief of staff was burglarized here about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We caught the 2 burglars, but they are these same gang members that are out there shooting up unincorporated King County and the South County cities. Now, his gun was with him, but they tried to steal the lockbox that the gun had been in, not knowing there was no gun in there, because he had left the lockbox out because it was empty. But that's what they're looking for, something they can sell on the street or something that they can use. So that's our main message. Lock your guns up. If you're a parent, keep your kids away from guns because they're going to die. And if you do have guns out there, adult or juvenile, we are going to catch you and we are going to put you in jail. And we're absolutely serious about that.
John, maybe you can answer, or anyone else up there. What is different this year than the past? Why are we seeing this rise in gang activity now?
You know, I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe there's more guns out there. Maybe there's more people out there. Maybe people have gotten out of jail and are back on the street. You know, who knows? But it's a fact of life. That's what's going on this year. And we're not going to stand for it. We're not going to let it happen. We are united to do everything we can do to put a stop to it. Okay.
Is this effort going on indefinitely right now that you guys are working together? What's kind of the timeline here?
Yeah, we're working together until we can get a handle on it. All right. Well, thank you very much.